Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome everyone to our regularly scheduled council meeting for April 12, 2021. This time I'd like to call our meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'd like to start our meeting tonight with the approval of the agenda that was everybody should have gotten and reviewed. I will entertain any motions to approve that agenda.
So moved, Sullivan.
Thank you, Member Sullivan. Anybody else second?
Second, Swanberg.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg. I will turn it over to our city administrator to take roll.
Thank you, Mayor Kirby. Councilmember Krogman.
Aye.
Councilmember Lozey.
Aye.
Councilmember Mahoney. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Mahoney.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Schlueter.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Aye.
Councilmember Swanberg.
Aye.
And Mayor Kirby.
Aye.
Thank you.
That said, we will move on to the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine and have been made available to the City Council at least 2 days in advance to the meeting. The items will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the agenda and considered in a normal sequence. At this time, I'll ask City Administrator Krugel to kind of review these real quickly, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mayor Kirby. We have City Council minutes from March 22nd. There were a couple revisions to that was sent out earlier today. Also, City Council minutes from March 29th from that special meeting we held on that Monday. We have disbursement approvals through April 12th, 2021, totaling 1.68 million. One couple of the items that were in there, we put new speakers up for our emergency sirens that you hear on that first Wednesday of the month. SCBA, so that self-contained breathing apparatus, those were purchased for the fire department. Keep in mind that that's a joint purchase with the partners that we have at the fire department and the fire commission. And then also there was a payment to a law firm related to the mall development agreement. And what was contained in that was a demo payment. So that was part of the development agreement. The city pays for the demo. There's a facade payment from the EDA. So the EDA will actually be transferring money to the city to the tune of $300,000, and the rest of it is the closing costs for the property transfer. So essentially the parking lot that was formerly city owned is now owned by the developer, and the city has acquired the right of way for the road. And this was all done following the development agreement that was passed in 2020. So all the partners are performing in that development agreement, and as you can see, things are moving, and we have a couple items on the agenda tonight as well to consider related to the mall development or redevelopment project. Item D, public dance permit. That's for the Sueur Fire Department fireman's dance. Keep in mind, I believe that's going to be held the first week in June, depending on COVID restrictions. If they're more or less at that time, we'll be following those. Just as a note, we have the community garden contract with the Presbytery Church. That's something that we renew annually with them, so that the city has access to the property to have the community gardens that people can sign up for. Then we have a Le Sueur Chamber of Commerce request for music in the parking lot. This is formerly called Music in the Park, and it's an event, a monthly event that the chamber holds, and kind of this is a transition year where they're going to be kind of in the downtown area, and then next year they'll be planning to do this event on Main Street. Then we have some personnel actions, some various part-time police officer hires. You maybe saw those on Facebook as we generally get those individuals backgrounded and they're available for part-time work. We kind of let the public know so they kind of can see a familiar face. And then we have a contract with Bolton & Mank for that 1 million gallon water tower construction phase services. So the engineering services related to that project, just formalizing that agreement that we have with Bolton & Mank to design and bid out that project. That's what we have for consent tonight. If there are any questions, please let me know.
Thank you. Appreciate your help there. Anybody have any questions for Administrator Krugel? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Councilmember Krogman, so moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Krogman. Do I have a second?
Councilman Lozey, second.
Councilmember Lozey, thank you very much for seconding that. Any other discussion? If not, I will turn it over to City Administrator Krugel for a roll.
Thank you, Mayor Kirby. Councilmember Krogman.
Aye.
Councilmember Lozey.
Aye.
Councilmember Mahoney.
Aye.
Councilmember Schleter.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Aye.
Councilmember Swanberg.
Aye.
And Mayor Kirby.
Aye.
Thank you.
Moving on to public comment. If you wish to participate in public comment, you must sign up prior to the commencement of the meeting. Negative remarks about city staff or employees is not allowed. You will have a time limit of 5 minutes to comment. The total public comment period shall be 30 minutes for non-agenda items and 30 minutes per agenda item. Disruptive and disorderly behavior will not be tolerated. Administrator Krugel, do we have anybody signed up tonight for a comment?
Mayor Kirby, right now we do not have anybody signed up. We do have four people in attendance tonight, but nobody is raising their hand and nobody's previously signed up to the meeting. So maybe we give them a couple more seconds. And if you would like to participate in public comment, please raise your hand. But yeah, I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand at this moment.
Very good. Well, with that said, I think we'll move on to the regular agenda if we may. And with the regular agenda, we will start with the Code Amendment, Chapter 33, regular agenda item 6A.
Thank you, Mayor Kirby, members of the council. What you have before you is a code amendment being proposed related to Chapter 33, and in particular with some items related to the Planning Commission. So I will turn it over to Community Development Director DiMaggio to give a synopsis. This is the first reading. What we're looking for tonight is the potential waiving of the first reading and the direction to bring this forward at the next meeting for the second reading and the ultimate potential adoption of the ordinance that would make these changes. So with that, I'll turn it over to Community Development Director DiMaggio.
Good evening, Mayor Kirby, members of the council. Thank you, Jasper, for that introduction. If you could please go forward one more page. So the Planning Commission a few years ago actually drafted a policy and procedure manual. The Planning Commission uses this, and it's just I think you've all reviewed it and looked at it. It's just a really good manual that goes over how does someone get on the Planning Commission, what happens if there's someone who needs to be replaced on the Planning Commission, what's expected, what is a typical meeting like. It's a great manual that goes over kind of what the first meeting of the year will do, how officers will get elected, and every year that document actually gets reviewed by the Planning Commission, and that's part of the policy and procedure manual. So in January of 2021, as we were reviewing it, COVID has kind of made us realize to maybe be a little bit more flexible in this policy and procedures. So you'll be seeing some updates with that, but one of the things would be, instead of really being, a lot of things fell to the first meeting in January, for example, some of this will say that by February 15th, just in case things happen as with COVID this year, I think just to be a little bit more flexible with some of the dates that they had. But as we were reviewing the policy document and potentially making changes, our fabulous previous liaison, Councilmember Krogman, did realize that there was a section in City Code Chapter 33 that actually went over many of the same things that were in our policy and procedure manual. But unfortunately, these two documents were not in sync with each other. So from a staff perspective, I apologize for that. I did not realize that Chapter 33 of the City Code referred back to the Planning Commission and what should happen at the first meeting of the year. A lot of that was already in the City Code. So what we're now asking to do is to have that be amended. Some of the other things that we're asking be amended from Chapter 33 were some of the roles and responsibilities of the Planning Commission. The last time this was changed was in 1973, it looks like. So the duties of the Planning Commission, I would say, are quite a bit different than what they used to be. And so we're asking to amend those. And the amendments that we're asking be made would actually be in line with the Planning Commission's policy and procedure manual. And so I apologize if there's some newer members of the council that haven't seen this. This was adopted by the City Council on February 26, 2019. And as I said, the Planning Commission is very diligent about making sure that this gets updated. I think the information in there is very accurate and very clear of what the roles and responsibilities are of that group. So tonight we would ask you to please waive the first reading of the updates to Chapter 33, and then we will ask to have the second reading at the second meeting this month. And as I said, the changes in here will just go to reflect the updated policy and procedure manual that the Planning Commission does utilize. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions of staff.
Anybody have anything for Director DiMaggio? Any questions, concerns regarding Chapter 33? If not, we'll move on to the staff's recommending that the City Council waive the first reading, Chapter 33 updates. The second reading will take place on April 26, 2021. If there's no questions, I'll entertain any motions.
Councilman Swanberg, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg. Is there a second?
Second, Sullivan.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. With that, I will turn it over to City Administrator Krugel for a roll.
Mayor Kirby, I think we should ask for discussion.
Thank you. I always miss that. Any discussion, questions, concerns from anybody before we turn it over for a vote? If not, then I will send it back to Administrator Krugel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Kirby. We'll go Councilmember Krogman,
Aye.
Councilmember Lozey,
Aye.
Councilmember Mahoney,
Aye.
Councilmember Schlueter,
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan,
Aye.
Councilmember Swanberg,
Aye.
and Mayor Kirby.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Thank you.
The next item tonight is regular agenda item 6B, zoning code amendments, chapter 153. I will turn it over to Administrator Krugel and he'll go from there.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor Kirby. This is the second reading of the zoning code amendments to chapter 153. What we're looking for tonight is to waive the second reading potentially and then adopt the actual ordinance that has been included in the packet. And with that, I will turn this over again to Community Development Director DiMaggio to present.
Thank you, Jasper. Thank you, Mayor Kirby and City Council members. Again, this was an ordinance that I would say as we redid Chapter 153 in 2019, there were some sections of the ordinance that definitely needed the citizens to use and staff to use, and these are some sections that are now coming back that definitely need to be modified. As I said, we've had a little bit over a year to use these, about a year and a half. The Planning Commission has reviewed the primary issues and they are recommending these modifications. A public hearing was held on March 11th, 2021 to review the modifications. We did have one member, a business owner from the community, who talked about making the modifications. The requests we're asking for are in the fence ordinance, the pool ordinance, and the maximum impervious surface in the general business, the light industrial, and the general industrial zones. We did hold the first hearing. It was waived by the City Council on March 22nd, 2021. Tonight, we are asking you to waive the second reading of this ordinance and to adopt a resolution and the ordinance. I believe the ordinance is 590. Jasper, if you could just move forward one more page, please. I'm not sure if anyone had any questions about the ordinance modifications. This ordinance will go into effect on April 19th. Once you do approve it, if you should approve it tonight, it does get published in the newspaper. We'll also do some publication, we'll also make sure we get it out on Nextdoor and Facebook and other places like that to make sure the public understands that we have had some changes, especially to the pool code. I'm already getting calls from people, and people are excited about the changes, I would say, to the fence ordinance. And I know some of the businesses are excited about the maximum impervious surface ordinance. I'm not sure if some people have noticed there is some construction going on over by Cambria. They're very close to that number now, so I think that they're very relieved as well that we're looking at making these modifications. And if you have any questions for me, please let me know, but these are the requests this evening.
Any questions for Development Director DiMaggio or Administrator Krugel from the council?
Mayor Kirby.
Kirby.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna add one more thing if I could.
Go ahead, Jasper.
All right. So you may have noticed that Chapter 33 doesn't require a public hearing, but Chapter 153 does. So just as a point, so some chapters do. So it's defined in the city code how to update certain chapters. Chapter 153 requires that public hearing that we held at the Planning Commission, but Chapter 33 does not require a public hearing. So I don't know if there was if that was running through City Council's mind about why one of them had a public hearing and one didn't. It's defined in the city code as far as how you amend each chapter, and that's why there's some differences there. I just want to point that out. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jasper.
My phone doing good, remember?
Anybody else left?
My phone doesn't show camera. Huh?
If
Yes.
not, staff recommends that the City Council waive the second reading of updates to Chapter 153 and approve resolution number R 2021-015 and ordinance 590. This ordinance will go into effect on April 19, 2021.
Mayor Kirby, I actually have one more question.
Yes, sir.
Sam, you said that there was a business that came to the public hearing. Was it in support of it or was it against the changes?
It was in support of it. It's actually the gentleman who, Mr. John Henry is his name, and Mr. Henry bought the Sueur storage, the mini storage building, which is near Hazel Street and Dakota Street. I'm not exactly sure which streets it's on over there. And when he bought it, unfortunately, there was some assumption that his plans had been approved all the way through so that he could actually expand his building. But really what was approved, it wasn't what he thought it was, unfortunately. And so basically if he's almost at the maximum now, he's almost at the 50% now. And so he came to talk to the Planning Commission about how this is really having an effect on the business that he bought. And we had a great talk about it. And, obviously we told him he could apply for a variance, but he would be looking at a variance. Cambria would be looking at a variance, and we'd actually have one other business potentially looking at a variance. So when you have 3 businesses in town looking at variances, I think that's an indicator that maybe we need to look at our code. So that's what staff was trying to be proactive, and that's why we started looking at it early on.
Yep. Thank you. I'd go ahead and make a motion to approve this.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. He's made a motion to approve the zoning code update, Chapter 153. Do we have anybody who wants to second that motion?
Schleter, second.
Thank you, Councilmember Schleter. Any discussion, comments, concerns? If not, I will turn it over to Administrator Krugel for a roll.
Mayor Kirby, this is Member Mahoney. I have a question about process. So the first reading was waived and now the second reading is being waived. What are we missing out in future discussion by waiving these readings?
Mayor Kirby, if I may, I can address that. So Councilmember Mahoney and everybody else, essentially you're waiving the reading, which means you physically do not read the changes out loud. And in order to do that, you need to have a unanimous vote. So if, let's say, one council member votes against waiving the second reading, then it would still pass, but it would have to be read. And that would be read by somebody on the city council or staff so that it is physically read. So you're not really losing any sort of discussion component. You're just losing, or you're not actually doing the physical reading of the ordinance as it's written.
And this ordinance is, it's available to everybody online, is that not correct?
That is correct. It's in the packet, and after, so let's say if this motion second passes, what we do is we publish the ordinance in the local paper, and 7 days after it's published, then it actually becomes local law and is inserted into our city code.
It's a very good question, Councilmember Mahoney. Thank you. Does that offer a little clarity for you?
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else? Any other discussion before we turn it over to the?
Mayor Kirby, if I may add, Councilmember Mahoney was actually at the public hearing, so if I missed anything, Councilmember Mahoney, please be sure to add it in. But I think they were pretty positive about the changes, and they worked diligently to make them.
Yep, I agree with everything that was said. I think just reiterating the need to control stormwater when increasing the impervious surfaces, which it sounded like when Director Kucera came forward, he reassured us that there would be.
Anything else? Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Administrator Krugel to take a roll.
Thank you, Mayor Kirby. Councilmember Krogman,
Aye.
Councilmember Lozey,
Aye.
Councilmember Mahoney,
Aye.
Councilmember Schleter,
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan,
Aye.
Councilmember Swanberg,
Aye.
and Mayor Kirby.
Aye. And if Community Development Director DiMaggio is still on, I don't know if everybody got a chance to look at this week's or this month's River Valley Women. There's a nice article about Sam DiMaggio in there. So thank you for your notoriety. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, sir. And I'm going to stay on. I'm excited for the next discussion, so I'll be here.
Okay, good. Moving on to regular agenda item 6C, Reconnecting South Main Street. Administrator Krugel, you want to take us through that, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Kirby. Members of City Council, before you tonight, we do have City Engineer Corey Beanfang here to kind of go over the bids that we received for the project, the Reconnecting South Main Street project. And as a reminder, that area is the stretch of Main Street that was vacated, given back to property owners back in the 1970s. And what we're doing is we're putting Main Street back through so that it connects the north side and the south side where the mall was. And what we have tonight is a consideration to accept the bids and potentially award the project. So with that, I'll turn it over to City Engineer Beanfang, and he can present. And we also have Public Services Director Chair and myself here if we need to have any other additional questions answered by us. So I'll turn it over to Corey.
All right. Excuse me. Thank you, Jasper. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. So Jasper noted tonight is the intent is to cover the recently opened bids and consider those for award. But as I did with the tower, I thought it'd be beneficial to just capture a timeline and a quick summary of events of what led us up to tonight. Really, this project in planning has been a priority for the city for a number of years, decades even. But the reality of this project, as far as actually proceeding with the implementation and getting through design into bidding, has been a pretty tight and quick timeline, starting middle of last summer with the closure of the new mall ownership. Basically purchasing the mall property from Valley Green Square at the end of June, and that kicked in immediately our surveying efforts, and with that closing of the deal, the reality that this project was going to have the traction to be the point where we are tonight to consider proceeding with construction. We had a corridor meeting then with those adjacent corridor owners to touch on, what was anticipated to be a project process, identify goals and have a collaboration with them as far as the visioning for this. And then that corridor meeting then set the stage for reaching out to Planning Commission and EDA, really solidifying that our concept was capturing those plans in that vision. The demolition, as we all were able to witness and see, was what concluded there at the end of 2020, and really opening up then that corridor for this new road connection. Proceeding then right after the new year with that council approval of the concept. We had then touched with the corridor in early February with that concept and re-emphasizing our intentions for what was going to be proceeding into the final plans and ultimately into the contractor bid. We then secured that authorization to proceed into bidding, with those bids then being open in early April. And we feel that's a reasonable time for bidding. It was a competitive bidding season. I think that late March, early April there was a lot of bids that were being opened, and so we identified early on as we wanted to be in that March, April timeframe, and I think we were successful in that. And then ultimately that brings us to tonight. So we've opened those bids, we've reviewed them, and then my intention here is to kind of talk you through the results of those. So if you don't mind, Jasper. So just wanted to, this is a concept that hopefully is not unfamiliar to all those here tonight. Just wanted to reemphasize that the concept that we've prepared, that we've got acceptance on, and that we ultimately utilize to prepare our final plans. That's been consistent along, and that is the pricing that we're reviewing tonight is consistent to this concept. So everything that we proposed to build and we intended to build and we showcased as being incorporated in this project, that's what was bid. So just always want to cover and capture that just so folks understand the value of pricing, that what we're comparing it against. If you don't mind, Jasper. So at the bid opening, which was held all online, we received 3 bids, all deemed to be acceptable, all deemed to be complete. The first and the low bidder was from Pember Companies for the bid amount listed there of the $2,247,084.65. Maybe an unfamiliar contractor for our community, and I'm gonna describe and reconfirm their competence here during my presentation tonight. But they were the low bidder. The second low bidder, which is a familiar face and name, that's the contractor that's currently actively completing our big turnback project, SM Henches and Sons, was a very close second, just with slightly over $40,000 increase to the low bid. And then the third bidder, Wenzel Construction, they're out of Owatonna, a little bit higher there at a couple $100,000 greater at that 2.4 number. So bids, we feel were very competitive. Certainly the 1 and the 2 bidder, you really like to see a tightness of those bids. And I think overall the imbalance, there aren't any. There's no major imbalances where one is majorly low or one is majorly high. So from a bidding standpoint, we felt that this is a very good capture. And I think it is a good communicator that, the project as presented, they were able to interpret and really, capture the market value of that. Speaking of market value, I think it's understood and has been communicated that the bids did come in over estimate. In conversations with that low bidder, it's really just, I guess, a representation of the market today. We are seeing cost escalation. We had a conversation about that just last meeting about the tower. So those market inflations on materials and resources did correlate into this project, South Main Street, unfortunately. But the low bidder Pember Companies out of Menominee, Wisconsin. That's about a 2-hour drive from Sueur for folks that aren't familiar, just east on 94 there. And I personally have experience with them as well as our firm, and they are a qualified and competent contractor. And I'd like to showcase some of the work that we've delivered with them on an engineering contractor side. If you don't mind, Jasper. So Pember companies kind of set the stage. They're a lot like a Hench's. They have a lot of expertise within their company. They approach projects trying to be a more of a full service contractor. They have very low need for subs. They do some building work. They do structural concrete. They certainly do concrete paving and sidewalk work. They have their own utility and grading crews. So they approach a project much like Hench's in that they are able to do a lot of work in house. And I think those bids were reflective of that. There's a little bit more distance with Pember. One of the projects that we delivered with them just a few years ago, an award-winning project nationally, was the Hastings Riverfront project. And you see on the lower left there, it was a downtown rehab. In this sense we weren't reconstructing all of excuse me, all of the roadway, but you can see like the intersections, the bump outs, the colored concrete. Really that streetscape heavy aesthetic, that was this project, and they did a good job with that. And then on the right there, you see some of the decorative elements again with the colored concrete, the landscape, the streetscape, the bridge, the brick pillars with the ornamental, metal, feature there, the railing. So just, really wanted to showcase and just, comfort, I guess, council based on the unfamiliar face. We have a lot of confidence in their ability, I guess. And if Jasper wouldn't mind advancing one more, we've got another project that we completed with them just in 2019 in the city of Red Wing. This was one that I personally delivered, 3rd and Bush Street, intersection bump outs, colored concrete, scored concrete. And then I delivered another project with them. It was a trail rehabilitation with railing and riprap along a pond. So, as with any contractor, it's going to take, attentiveness and management of their process and their work. But I do feel optimistic in their competency, and in speaking with them, they're excited about it. They foregoed some bids on that busy April day to compete for this project, and so they're excited to hopefully help us realize this vision and be successful in delivering this. So if you don't mind, Jasper. So, one of the things I touched on is that we did open bids with costs greater than the engineer's estimate. And after looking at that and doing some thorough reviewing of those bid amounts, certainly from the low bidder, I do want to seriously pursue in communicating the effects of value engineering. I think looking back, there's some things where maybe we over designed, or maybe the bidder wasn't quite fully understanding the intent and put in some risk or put in an inflation of cost number that resulted in this increase in project cost. And so we would like to go back and work with the low bidder. They've communicated a willingness to do so, to value engineer and hopefully decrease this project cost. And I think we can appreciate a number in the 6 figures here to bring this project down, to hopefully help with that overage a little bit, increase that affordability. I'm not talking about eliminating anything. I'm not talking about losing the aesthetic or the goals of the project, but just a little bit, attentiveness to maybe right sizing some of it to try to make it more affordable. With that in mind, then just wanted to cover the financing piece. So the funding for the project comes from a bunch, I guess a couple different resources. One, the most notable being the deed grant. I think that's really what makes this project a possibility from a local city standpoint, with about $700,000 of that $80,000 grant going to Main Street. The remaining portion then being covered by the enterprise funds. We are replacing sewer, water, and storm. We're able to accommodate the new mall connections with those replacements, so really adding value to that project, and then just continuing that infrastructure of Main Street and the replacements. Really kind of fitting in the middle here between work we started last year with the turn back and then work we're hoping to continue with South Main next year. So really was a critical middle here to make sure that that infrastructure is replaced underneath the new road. And then really a significance that Joe and Shannon are going to capture later is that looking at the bonding, which we do plan to do to help finance this, and some of the retiring debt, we are projecting a zero tax levy impact. And I think that's really substantial when we're making this decision tonight to consider to move forward in this project, that we're able to balance zero there on that tax levy, that general fund impact. And then something else, that I wanted to capture and communicate is, we continue to reference back to the CIP. We have an adopted CIP. This is one of those projects in there. The water tower was one. We're going to be talking more here about that 36 project plan for 2022, and just really commitment of myself and staff to look at some of this bidding data, some of this market trending, and just really, a commitment to go look at the CIP and really make sure that the recommendations are representative of this, and then consistent based on priority and, based on timing. So just that, we're not passing on these project costs and just continuing to, I guess, recommend, projects or miscapture project costs, I think is really what our commitment is just to take this information. We're a little bit smarter now and make sure that we're looking at this as we project these projects out over that 10-year period. So just wanted to, emphasize, I think it goes without stating, but this is a high priority project for the city. It's been in our visioning and our planning for multiple different plans and many years. I think we've captured a project that certainly has a aesthetic and hopefully we feel achieves this visioning. And then notably, we have a commitment to proceed with the South Main Street, the mall. We already know is in process of their development, and so we feel like we are still successfully capturing that. And then based on this information, if you wouldn't mind, Jasper, at a staff level, we are asking for council tonight to consider a motion to approve the resolution that would formally accept and award the contract for the South Main Street reconnection project to Pembroke companies for that bid amount, that low bid amount that I mentioned. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or go into any greater detail if so wished by Mr. Mayor, the council.
City Engineer Beanfang, I have just kind of a quick comment. You showed a lot of pictures of quite a bit of custom concrete, a lot of colored concrete. Looks real nice. One of my biggest concerns, I was talking to a contractor the other day. He said one of the biggest problems a lot of cities have when they put that in is they don't maintain it. We do have plans to maintain that, such as seal coating it every year and things like that.
It's a good question, Mr. Mayor, and we do. There is a little bit more maintenance with the colored concrete. There's a different cure that gets applied when it's first installed. It's more of a sealer than a cure, and there are notably some I guess some maintenance things to be mindful of. The robustness of the concrete, I think, is comparable to the general concrete. One of the things that's probably more noticeable though in colored is just a commitment to stay with the colored. When you see maintenance team work done, and a lot of times you'll see where there isn't an attentiveness to try to replace the colored concrete with similar color. I know there's never a perfect match, but the color dies and the coloring has come a long ways. And so you start to see the gray concrete intermixed amongst the more aesthetic concrete. But you're right, there is a little bit more effort in the installation and in the sealing at that time and the maintenance scene, but manageable, and I think definitely offset by the aesthetic, by the upgrade that it offers. Not to be the sea of white concrete as we like to call it. So you're 100% correct, but I think manageable.
Thank you. And then I just have a real kind of a question for Administrator Krugel. We've got these bids and they're all fairly close, especially the top two. SM Henches, as we all know, did quite a bit of the CASA work and they're still doing a little bit of work around here. Could you explain to us, Administrator Krugel, I mean, if we have a company that we trust, one that we know their work, we feel comfortable with, and they're local, can we use a company like that if we do pay a little more for their work?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Kirby, and I can address that. So when we bid a project out like this, we're kind of constrained. We are constrained by state statute. So unless the apparent low bidder is not able to, and doesn't have the ability, I forget the terminology, Corey, but if they're not competent, then we could roll to the second bidder, but we would have to demonstrate that. And Pember Companies, in my opinion, doesn't fall into that category. They've done work in Minnesota. We can demonstrate that. So we are obligated by state statute to take the low bid unless we can demonstrate that the low bid is not competent. So long story short is that we don't really have discretion in choosing the second highest bidder or the third highest bidder based on what we want. We're obligated by state statute to do that apparent low bidder.
Okay, thank you. And I have no reason to question Pember Company's ability or work. I just thought I'd ask that question. With that, I'll open up any other questions if anybody has any.
Mayor Kirby, Sullivan. Go ahead, Corey.
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna make one final comment, Mr. Mayor. It's good too to get that competition. Sometimes it does require a contractor coming that's not local. And it helps maintain that competitiveness and just an attentiveness to that local contractor that, they need to be fair in their pricing, and they need to compete wholly. And so as an engineer and deliverer of these projects, from a city standpoint, that competition is good. And so I was happy to see that. Sometimes you find where, the only option you have is the local, and not that that's not the best option or right option. It helps keeps the cost competitive. So that was all I was going to add.
Thank you, City Engineer Bienfang. Councilmember Sullivan, you got a comment?
I do. Jasper, can you go back to the picture of what it's going to look like? So Corey, just out of curiosity, if you look at I guess it'd be on the right side, right top of the screen where the parking lot is now for the law firm, and can't think of what else is in there, the real estate. What are we gonna do in that corner to make it look finished? Obviously the sidewalk's going in there. There's no longer gonna be an entrance into that. In the diagram, show the parking the same. Obviously, I'm guessing that's not gonna be the case.
Yeah, it's not. It's not, Councilmember Sullivan. It's a good question. So it's kind of a multi-phased approach here. So the first is going to be the closure of that parking lot with access from Main Street. So we'll be constructing a curb in that parking lot and finishing that pavement to look finished, to look closed off from Main Street. There'll be a grass landscaped area between the sidewalk and that new curb of the parking lot. Additionally, the striping is going to be modified. It's going to be a 90-degree angle 90-degree configuration, different than the angle, so that it can be served from that west parking lot. And then the intention is that's how that would remain then for this year, the remainder of this year into early 2022. And then we have intentions, and we discussed, that there's a planned improvement of that west parking lot. And I think our intention would be then we would fully close off this parking lot and be able to market this city property, which this parking lot is, to potential redevelopment and service the parking needs for the law firm and the real estate from that newly reconfigured and improved parking lot on the west side. So we have intention to make it look right, as part of this project, and then even further improvement and ultimately the planned full removal as part of that parking lot improvement in 2022.
Okay. And Jasper, I guess then that leads me to one other question, kind of off the Main Street topic, but if we're having conversations about that, doesn't the bank own most of the back parking lot there?
They do, and this is Jasper speaking. They do, and I have been in communication with the bank management about that. So we are talking about that. There is a mishmash of city-owned and bank-owned parcels back there. Most of it is bank-owned, but there is city right-of-way that goes right through there too. So we're working through those details, and if there is something that's something that will be brought to city council as far as an agreement goes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions or comments?
Mayor Kirby, Councilman Swanberg, Corey, couple things. One, I was happy to hear you say that you may be able to negotiate with them a little bit to be able to bring some of that price down. And if you wouldn't mind my ignorance here, what specific materials are more expensive now in this project?
So we realized, I think, when it comes to some of the piping materials, that they're, when it comes to PVC main, some of the ductile water main, we're experiencing that those are a little bit more difficult to obtain. And while that's not a large portion of the project, that does have impact. As you recall, the structural retaining walls on the east side there to separate that mall plaza from the Main Street portion, as well as Main Street, all that concrete has steel in there. And as we talked about at the last meeting in regards to the water tower, that has some cost escalation right now. And then just, fuel pricing. So all of that is representative. And I'm not going to say that material prices was all of that escalation, but competitiveness of the bidding market, it all has an impact on it, Mr. Swanberg. And at the time of estimation, when we do these projects, we try to use that best available data to us, and certainly want to try to put forth the most accurate number that I possibly can. But there's just an honest and an admittance that you don't fully know the price of a project until you open those bids.
Right, I understand. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions, concerns? With that, I will accept any motions to approve Resolution R 2021-019, resolution accepting bids and awarding the contract, South Main Street Reconnection Project, awarding the contract to Timber Companies for the bid of $2,237,084.65.
Councilman Lewis, so moved. Councilman Lewis, so moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Lozey.
Sullivan.
Councilmember Sullivan, second. Any other discussion, comments, questions, or concerns? If not, I will turn it over to Administrator Kruger for a roll. Oh, I think you're muted.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor Kirby. Councilmember Krogman.
Aye.
Councilmember Lozey.
Aye.
Councilmember Mahoney.
Aye.
Councilmember Schlueter.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Aye.
Councilmember Swanberg.
Aye.
And Mayor Kirby.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Last item on tonight's agenda is 2021 general obligation bonds. This would be regular agenda item 6D. Administrator Krugel, do you want to review this for us?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kirby, members of City Council. What we have tonight is the plan and the schedule for basically funding 4 separate projects that we have here that now this last piece was the action that was just taken on the Main Street project to get that approved and award that bid. So we have multiple items from equipment certificates to a water tower to now a Main Street project that we're kind of combining all under one umbrella, understanding that will save us some issuance costs and issuing this all at once as a kind of a joint bond obligation issuance. We do have Shannon Sweetie, our financial consultant, along with our finance director, Joe Roby, here to present on this. I think Shannon's going to take point on the presentation, and Joe is here as well, and basically to go over what we're proposing and the schedule and things of that nature. So I will turn this over to Shannon Sweeney, the representative from David Drown and Associates, our financial consultant. So thank you, Shannon.
Thanks, Jasper. First slide that Jasper has up summarizes the project costs that we've included. And as he's mentioned, it includes the water tower, reconstruction and extension of Main Street, the utilities associated with that, 2 fire trucks and a plow truck, and also issuance costs associated with those projects. We're proposing to issue $8,080,000 in general obligation bonds. What we're not showing you even on the preliminary schedule is that cities are creatures of Minnesota statute. And so each of these different projects, we have to point to a separate authority and a procedure associated with that authority in order to implement the bond issues. And that's why we have a couple of extra resolutions that we'll be considering as part of this process if you choose to move forward with implementing the financing. Those would include calling for a public hearing on the proposed tax levy pledge, which we call a tax abatement pledge for the Main Street project, as well as authorization for the equipment certificate and required published notice. Ultimately, those different authorities allow us to borrow the money for the projects as proposed. Each one has different implications with regard to the term that's allowed under state statute. As I've mentioned, for the Main Street portions of the project, the street portion of that project in particular, under tax abatement authority, we're limited to 15 years. It can be extended to 20 years, but by and large, through our CIP process, we've been trying to keep financing for street reconstruction to a 15-year term. Reason for that is we have lots of street reconstruction needs, and we like to get into a pretty consistent rotation of being able to tackle those projects. And if we extend that term too long, we tend to get into an area where we're still paying off debt while we're doing some additional, more significant maintenance to those streets. And so 15 years has been a goal that we've tried to stick with, and hopefully we can accomplish. Vast majority of the debt service on this issue is being covered by tax levy and water utility revenues. I would consider both of those to be strengths for the city. And the reason I say strengths is because we have capacity that's coming online, one through debt that is falling off mainly, actually in both entities. And ultimately, we've taken the opportunity to structure our tax levy, our projected tax levy for this bond issue around a series of obligations that are being paid off. Those include the 2012 A bonds that had a levy of $70,000, Johnson Controls lease from 2010 that had a levy component of $77,000, 2014 B bonds that are paid off in 22 that had a levy of $61,200, and the 2010 D bonds that had a levy of $52,050 that expires in 23. And so if you looked at that preliminary cash flow, you see we start at a bit smaller tax levy component, and we build to a maximum of about $260,000, which we can offset with this debt that's being retired. And so we're not proposing that this new debt should require any sort of significant property tax levy increase because of the debt that's being retired during this 2 to 3 years that we're implementing the debt service payments for this project. It's a common strategy, and we've employed it here. In general, most folks like to see as steady or an even a property tax levy and rate as possible, and that was one of our more significant goals in this process. Additionally, the water utility had paid off some pretty significant debt a couple of years ago. We've been using that capacity to implement water projects, including the proposed tower that's been awarded, and we also have a little bit of water main reconstruction that's happening as part of this project. Sanitary sewer and storm sewer enterprises are contributing on a more modest basis to the tune of about $10,000 per year each. As we know, we're sensitive on our impact to sanitary sewer rates, and this project is not heavy in what it requires from the sanitary sewer utility in order to service this debt. At the end of the day, our structures are following statute with regard to term, as I mentioned earlier, and that the abatement component for the streetscape and street work, we're shooting for somewhere in that neighborhood of 15 years. On equipment, we're at 10 years, and that's again limited by statute. With regard to utility reconstruction, we're at a 20-year term. And so ultimately, that is our approach in structuring this new obligation that would fund these various projects. Again, I'd mentioned we're taking advantage of a $700,000 deed grant for the Main Street project, which is another compelling reason to consider the implementation of that project, because it's not every day that we have that amount of free money that's dedicated towards a project. If you decide to proceed with the financing as proposed, again, we have the 3 resolutions in your packet, and they include a resolution authorizing the sale. We have a resolution regarding the equipment certificate that we're required to publish. And then we have a resolution calling a public hearing that would be held at your May 24th meeting regarding the tax abatement component. Again, that's authorizing a tax levy that will fund essentially the Main Street street work and streetscape work. And if we proceed as proposed on June 9th, we would close on this issue. The interest rate would be fixed on the day of sale, which is May 24th. What that involves is our company preparing an offering document, distributing that to the various underwriters that bid on the purchase of bonds. They would submit competitive bids on the day of sale on May 24th that we would receive at 11 o'clock a.m. We'd then present those bids with a recommendation to the City Council that evening. If we received good bids, there'd be a recommendation for award. Ultimately, an issue of this size, and the reason timing of the various components of this project, I think, came together for your benefit is, as Jasper mentioned, we're not only saving probably in the magnitude of $30,000 in issuance costs by being able to do this at the same time, if not a little bit more than that, but also issues of larger size attract additional bidders. And that competition that's created through the attraction of additional bidders is a very good thing, and it tends to produce better results than we see on smaller sales. And so I think those work in the favor of combining these various needs. And fortunately, we have the timing where we have project costs well defined for each of those needs so that we can do this at the same time. With that, I'm more than happy to answer questions with regard to any of the 3 action items or the information I presented or my recommendations letter. But thank you for the opportunity to discuss your project financing.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Appreciate your input on this. Anybody have any questions for him or Mr. Roby or Administrator Krugel? Mr. Sweeney, I know you don't like to probably comment on this, but when we look at this, we're looking at the terms on this will be 15 years on this bond, and roughly, won't hold you anything, what are we looking at for like an interest rate?
Sure. I'm happy to comment. And we did include a preliminary cash flow that was attached to our recommendations letter, and the interest rate we used on that cash flow was a little bit conservative on the day that that memo was drafted. And the measure that you use is the net effective rate, which is essentially 1.893%. Well, we'll call it 1.9%, is where we believe the market to be the day that we drafted this letter, and I believe we're still in that similar magnitude. We actually had probably some pressure in our favor in the past week, and so hopefully we'll see an even better result than this.
And some of these bonds that are falling off, these smaller ones, what kind of rate were on those?
Oh, I'd have to look back through all those schedules, but given their vintage, I'd suggest they were probably in the 3 to 4.5% range.
Okay.
That's what was typical in that timeline.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mayor Kirby, this is Mahoney. I have a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
So you talked about some of the revenues coming from utilities, and in your packet, you did include some proposed rate increases. These are no different than what was discussed previously, or are these on top of rate increase discussions that we had earlier this year.
Sure. Councilmember Mahoney, for storm sewer and sanitary sewer, those are the same rate increases that are referenced in our capital improvement plan and rate study that was presented late last year. At the time the water tower was being considered for award, I had provided input to City Engineer Beanfang that we'd probably want to look at an additional % increase on water, given the scope of that project and the other things that we have happening. And that was if we wanted to maintain a similar cash position as what was proposed in the plan. So we had 2% annual increases in that capital improvement planning document for water. Now we're suggesting that 3% maintains the same level of cash in that utility. And so, and again, that was noted a few weeks ago when you awarded the construction contract for the water tower.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, I would recommend we go on to the action requested.
Yeah, Mayor Kirby, if I may add, I think what we'd like and what we're requesting is a separate motion for each of the resolutions.
Not one motion, but a separate for each.
Correct.
Okay. So with that said, the first resolution, I will accept the motion for resolution R 2021-016, calling public hearing on proposed tax abatement and issuance of bonds. Public hearing date of May 24, 21.
So moved, Swanberg.
Thank you,
Second.
City
Sullivan.
Councilmember Swanberg and City Councilmember Sullivan for seconding that motion. Any discussion? Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Administrator Krugel.
Thank you, Mayor Kirby. Councilmember Krogman,
Aye.
Councilmember Lozey,
Aye.
Councilmember Mahoney,
Aye.
Councilmember Schleter,
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan,
Aye.
Councilmember Swanberg,
Aye.
and Mayor Kirby.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Moving on to resolution R 2021-017, providing of the competitive negotiated sale of a $8,080,000 general obligation bond series 2021A. Any motion?
Sullivan. So moved.
City Councilmember Sullivan, motion accepted.
Second,
Seconded.
Mahoney.
Thank you,
Lozey,
Councilmember Mahoney. And seconded. Any other discussion, comments, questions? Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Administrator Krugel for that vote.
Thank you, Mayor Kirby. Councilmember Krogman,
Aye.
Councilmember Lozey,
Aye.
Councilmember Mahoney,
Aye.
Councilmember Schleter,
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan,
Aye.
Councilmember Swanberg,
Aye.
and Mayor Kirby.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
And then the last resolution is R 2021-018, resolution determining the necessity to issue a general obligation capital note not to exceed $1,050,000. Any motions?
This is Councilmember Krogman, so move.
Councilmember, anybody want a second motion?
Second, Sullivan.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. Any discussion, comments, concerns?
Mayor Kirby, Member Sullivan.
Yes, sir.
Jasper or Shannon, can you explain what this actually means? So we approved a resolution for 8 million. Now what's the additional 1 million?
A portion of the $8,080,000 bond issue, Councilmember Sullivan, is for equipment. And statute requires that if we issue equipment notes that exceed 0.25% of market value that we have to publish a resolution indicating that we're intending to issue bonds for those purchases. And so it's part of the $8,080,000, but it's a separate notice that has to be published for 10 days before we can award sale.
Okay, so just to clarify for the general public, it's not an additional $1 million that's included in that 8.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. That's a good question, and thank you for the clarity, Mr. Sweeney. With that, I'll turn it over to Administrator Krugel.
Thank you, Mayor Kirby. Councilmember Krogman.
Aye.
Councilmember Lozey.
Aye.
Councilmember Mahoney.
Aye.
Councilmember Schleter.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Aye.
Councilmember Swanberg.
Aye.
And Mayor Kirby.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney and Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mayor.
Moving on to the last portion of tonight's meeting, comments, reports, items of appreciation. Any city council members that want to add anything or have any information they want to share with us, this is your platform, this is your time. So we will start with Councilmember Krogman.
Yes, this is actually more for council members and the mayor, but the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities was planning to hold their summer conference in person in Red Wing, and that has been changed. It's now going to be held in Alexandria, and they've shortened it by 1 day. So the new dates are 29 and 30 July of this year. And all council members and the mayor are able to attend, and I would encourage that attendance if you can do so. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Krogman. Appreciate it. Moving on to Councilmember Lozey. Would you like to share anything with us tonight?
No. No, thanks.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Mahoney.
Hi, I would just give an update on the Planning Commission. At our last meeting, the commissioner started talking about the Future of the City Forum, which is a goal of this council. And one of the thoughts currently being looked at is doing a yearly survey. Some of the things that the commission was really key on was making sure that it was low cost, accessible, and that it was measurable. So we can do this every year, and our questions, we can kind of see progress as we move forward. And so Sam had brought forward some 10 questions, which we had some really good discussion about. And so we'll be continuing to work on that in future meetings. But I think we made a lot of really good progress at this last meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember Leah Mahoney. Appreciate your input. Moving on to Councilmember Schleter.
A few things. First, the meeting of the Sueur County officials. A lot of discussion about the construction projects going on in the communities in the county. There was also quite a bit of talk about Senate Bill 915, which would be limiting local government, municipal planning and zoning controls. All the communities are really against that. I did talk to the administrator today, and Jasper is on this. He's keeping an eye on it. HRA meetings, had 2 since our last meeting. First regular meeting, the walkways are torn down and the new ones are under construction. We had a special meeting today, and we did accept the director's resignation. She's accepted a new position, and we are starting a search for a new director. And Region 9 development, there will be a full board meeting this Wednesday.
Thank you, Councilmember Schleter. Appreciate your input. Moving on to Councilmember Sullivan. Anything you'd like to share with us?
The only thing I have, Mayor Kirby, is I guess for Jasper, do you know where we're at with the task force for the community center?
Yes, that is a great question. So I have a list and I am reaching out to members to make sure that they're on board. And then we'll likely have a kickoff meeting, I'm hoping sometime in May. So we're still compiling a list. I am still trying to look for representatives, if there is anybody that's listening, representatives that live in the community, both young families and people who have lived here for a while that are willing to participate, that aren't members, are not members of the community center. So to get that demographic or that group, we don't have anybody that has accepted that role. So I am still looking for that. So, but there will be something here shortly. I think we'll get that finalized, and hopefully in May we'll kick that off.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. That's actually going to be one of my questions also. Moving on to Councilmember Swanberg.
Thank you, Mayor Kirby. Hey, Nick, how would you like us to pronounce your last name? Are you still there?
Councilmember Losey, are you still with us? Losey?
Yeah, sorry.
Nick, do you prefer loose or Losey?
It doesn't really matter to me, honestly.
Okay.
It's Losey, technically.
Okay.
It's easier for people when I say loose, I guess. Typically.
I didn't want to.
So it doesn't
offend you.
matter, I guess, at that point.
Thanks, Nick. Also, just wanted to mention, I hear many reports, glowing reports about our dog park. So I just wanted to mention that now that spring is out and dogs are running again. I hear a lot of real positive comments about that. And I just want to throw this out again. I'm hoping we can meet in person real soon.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg. Duly noted. We appreciate that input. And back to the dog park. I walk by there quite a bit often, or very often, and boy, it gets used a lot. So it's a great asset to the community. So moving on to Mayor Kirby, I have not too much to add other than we have a Ridgeview Hospital Board meeting. I believe that's April 27th. I'll share with you in our May meeting what I hear there, and other than that, I don't have anything else. And I'm going to leave it up to Administrator Krugel if there's anything you want to share with us.
I'll keep it very brief, but as you can see around town, we have a lot of construction projects going on with the CASA 22 and soon to have the water tower project kicking off, and also the Main Street project here. So a lot of activity. Make sure that if you're interested, you're following social media, our website, that type of thing. There's project websites and whatnot as well. So you know, if you want some information, definitely reach out to us at the city, but we do have resources out there providing some updates at least weekly for all of the projects that we have going on right now in 2021. So if you're interested, I think the information's out there, but if you do have questions, you know, definitely reach out to staff and we'll make sure that your questions are addressed. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, and I want to thank all of our council members and everybody who's listening tonight for being with us. At this time, I'll entertain any motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor?
I'll second that.
Aye. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thank you.